To do, can we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next thing I'd like to do is, if everybody here could just bow your heads, let's just have ourselves a silent prayer. And while we're doing that, if you could consider our U.S. Constitution while you're praying, I think it needs it right now. That would be a great idea. So let's just take a moment, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tim Shufflin, and I'm going to be your MC tonight. I'm from Jerome, Michigan, which is here in Hillsdale County, and I own a firearms business. That's a rough business to be in right now, just so you all know. You can find me online if you ever want to look me up. My name is Tim Shufflin. I'd like to thank you all for being here, though, on this Friday night. Your presence acknowledges how important you all believe that our founding document is. We're going to have some guests here today that believe our Constitution is paramount in how we govern. We don't have to agree with all of them on every issue, though. But we can all agree on the gravity of the discussion and having our debate on the importance of exchanging ideas. I've been a constitutional conservative since I was 19 years old. It's kind of a lonely life being one of those since we're 19. I graduated from a college called Northwood University in Midland, Michigan. And I loved studying the Federalist Papers. I loved studying constitutional law. I loved hearing our professors have those heated debates with all the young idealists in class. I soaked it all up, and then I did nothing. Oh, I complained about federal overreach. I did it my entire adult life, but I did nothing. That is until 2 years ago, when I had my firebrand moment. You see, sometimes government tries to snuff out your freedom right where you live, right in your backyard. My township, Somerset, entertained passing a firearms ordinance, which is outlawing the discharge of firearms on residential property. I don't have residential property, so this didn't directly affect me. But by gosh, I won't let my neighbors be affected. And either did the people who stood up in my township and went on up to that planning commission and raised Cain. Neighbors who I never knew were at these meetings. Our elected township supervisor had proposed this ordinance, and he admitted as much to me in our open meetings. We had other battles, many of them, too many to take up your time with tonight, but we prevailed. We prevailed while having no power on that board. We did it strictly through the will of the people. Thomas Paine once said that men should not petition for their rights, but they should take them. Well, the people of Somerset Township either kept or took back many of our rights over the last 2 years. I understand Mr. Glenn Froebel is in the crowd here. I saw him earlier. Are you out there, Glenn? Yeah. Glenn is actually a real-life personal hero of mine. And some of you all might laugh at that because Glenn's a great guy. He's fun to have fun with. But I'm going to tell you something. Glenn lives 25 miles from Somerset. Glenn doesn't have an ox to be gored in Somerset. But there was nothing in it for himself except for to help his fellow man, to make him better off. Glenn and his lovely wife came to many of our meetings and voiced their support. They strategized with us. They gave us hope. And I thank you, Glenn Froebel, for everything that you did, and so do the people of Somerset. Well, from those battles rose up a team of people with a simple platform. Keep your land, keep your money, keep your freedom. The KLF for short. We are a conservative, constitutional bunch of Republicans running for office in Somerset Township. And I am a member of that team. And I am personally running for Somerset Township Supervisor. I am a constitutional conservative, and I will not consider law which is unconstitutional. I will also not consider law which makes someone less free while making no one else more free. I will not consider a new tax, period. I don't pretend to speak for the rest of our team. Some of them are here in this room. But it's high time we start making the people big and make our government small. It's time to see just how free we can be, right up to where our Constitution limits us. It's time to restore our nation to what it is, a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. It is this goal, to restore our nation to a constitutional republic, to preserve it, that makes us all conservatives. With that said, I'd like to introduce our first guest. This man is an avid track shooter, a Jackson High School graduate. He attended the University of Michigan College of Literature, Science, and Arts, majoring in economics. He has had an over 40-year career in the construction industry. He started out as a mere construction laborer and moved up to vice president within his company, engineering and managing both public and private sector projects. In other words, he had a real job. He is currently a candidate for U.S. Representative in our 7th Michigan Congressional District, which encompasses Branch, Eaton, Jackson, Hillsdale, Lenawee, Monroe, and Washtenaw counties. His campaign information can be found at northforcongress.com. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Douglas Radcliffe North.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the introduction. I like this chronological aspect as far as how we got involved to begin with. Mine started when I retired in 2012, and I had a simple question. Because I was raised when there was full employment and trust in government, my question was, what the hell happened? And as I started on my journey, I had a perspective of what the Federal Reserve is all about in 1998. But I didn't realize that my enthusiasm or desire for the love, I never served my country, to do what I can in order for it to be the way I thought it was. But through my journey, I realized my thoughts, my beliefs were a residue of what was established in 1787 with the Constitution and as importantly the Bill of Rights. I was told and I've read that 3% of the population participated in the revolution to establish our independence from the Crown Corporation. The spirit of 76 lives right here, and I appreciate that. My name is Douglas North from Jackson, Michigan. I obtained 25% of the vote against Congressman Walberg in the 14th primary because 10,000 people trusted me. I hope you trust me. Money. Money does a strange thing when you don't earn it. And I'm glad that I realized that. People wanted to give me money. I wasn't raised that way. But the norm is you take money from people, you run, spend it, and win. But I took it more seriously than that. Because I know that it does something to your soul when you take something that you did not earn. So the next time you see Congressman Walberg, ask him why he needs to charter 5 boats to catch a fish. As far back as he's been a congressman, he charters 5 boats to fish on Lake Erie. And I'm sure his contributors, his $1 million plus contributors, don't know that. I'm sure Congressman Walberg was a great guy at one time. I understand he was a pastor. I've never heard him preach. I'm sure he was a great guy. But when you take something that doesn't belong to you, it has an effect. And you do not have to worry about me betraying you. Because nobody owns me from the get-go. That's the important thing. You don't start on a bad step. Voters tell me that Congressman Walberg should be charged with treason because he has broken his oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America by voting for, as an example, Barack Obama's Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Deal, which sacrifices our national sovereignty to a world trade organization. Congressman Walberg voted to destroy the Constitution of the United States of America. His voting record cannot lie. But he is very, very deceitful. I want to share one thing with you before we get to the main show. Anyone who is given a position of power, whether it be a member of Congress, whether it be the President, whether it be the Supreme Court, whether it be the Executive Cabinet, whether it be the judicial, whether it be finance, whether it be military, the courts, have that power because they can be blackmailed. That's how the establishment maintains their control. But then along comes a guy named Trump with enough you-know-what money to totally terrify the establishment. The establishment owns both teams, Republicans and Democrats. And they know if they don't destroy Trump, Trump will destroy them. Hillary calls Trump a loose cannon. What I said in 14 is pretty much everything that Trump is saying now. But I don't believe as many people would be. It's because of Trump that so many people are awake. That they don't need to go into detail as far as defining exactly who the establishment is, but I wanted to do that. And I don't mind telling you that I can't talk about this with a lot of people because it's not necessary, number one, and number two, they wouldn't believe that that's okay. I want to thank you very much for your patriotism and coming and listening to the sheriff tonight. And again, I look forward to August 2nd. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. North. I understand we got some travel problems here. Did Mr. Matt Kroll III make it here? Okay. Our next guest tonight has been actively involved in protecting our Constitution for many, many years. He brought a lawsuit against the federal government asserting portions of the Brady Handgun Violence Protection Act, otherwise known as the Brady Bill, had violated the U.S. Constitution. He took that overreaching federal government all the way to the Supreme Court. And by gosh, he won.
Ooh.
As far as I know right now, he is the only county sheriff to ever take the federal government to the Supreme Court, let alone win. Could be wrong on that, and might be corrected later. He was sheriff in Grand County, Arizona. He fought for your Second Amendment as a lobbyist for the Gun Owners of America. If any of you all here know about the Gun Owners of America, those folks have teeth. He was 2 times a candidate for U.S. Congress. He founded the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association. He established the County Sheriff Project movement. He has fought abuses by the Bureau of Land Management personally. He attended and graduated from the FBI National Academy in 1992. I can just keep going on here. This man's defeat of the Brady Bill is being used as a model in South Carolina to block Obamacare through Bill HB 3101 right now. Our guest has authored or co-authored 5 readings or books, including Are You David? County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, From My Cold Dead Fingers, The Magic of Gun Control. Now that one's funny, The Magic of Gun Control. And The Victory for State Sovereignty. You can find him at sheriffmack.com. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sheriff Richard Mack.
Tim, I've checked it out, and you're not wrong. I believe I'm the only sheriff in American history that ever sued the federal government and won a case against them at the U.S. Supreme Court. I will say, 6 other sheriffs joined me in the lawsuit, so that was 7 sheriffs who participated in that movement from across the country. That's 7 out of 3,086 sheriffs. 7 actually defended the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment in that fight. But I was the one that started the whole thing, so I guess I can say I'm the only sheriff to start a lawsuit against the federal government, take on the Supreme Court, and win. And the Victory for State Sovereignty is this little booklet, and if you become a member of the CSPOA, this card is back on the table. If you become a member of the CSPOA, you get this book free. Now, this looks like maybe, what, a 50-cent book? It's a $400,000 booklet. How much do you think it costs to go to the Supreme Court? Yeah. And so this is a highlighted version of that Supreme Court case. Every one of you should read that. Take 15, 20 minutes and read this. It will shock you, and I'm going to show you a lot of it tonight up here on the screen. Because it's the most ignored ruling in American history. Specifically so, because when Bill Clinton lost this, he's the one that lost. Jan Marino, when he lost, he's the one that defended this bill. He's the one that signed it into law, the Brady Bill. And when you lose, you kind of have a hard time actually enforcing it. You know the President of the United States is required to enforce Supreme Court decisions. He refused. In fact, he did just the opposite. So we know how lawless all the Clintons are. We're going to get the head lawless as President of the United States, the way it's living right now. But regardless of who your president is, it's more important who your sheriff is.
Yeah.
It's more important who your sheriff is than who runs Congress. Did you know that?
Yep.
Because Washington, he's right. He's absolutely right. The corrupt, I don't even know what to call it anymore. The corrupt New World Order, or the corrupt corporations, or just corruption, period. Corruption, owns both the RNC and DNC. Okay, they own both. They do. Very correct statement. And so, who's going to defend you from the corruption of Washington, D.C.?
Sure.
Where are you going to go? Who can you turn to for peace, liberty, and safety when government becomes venal and oppressive, as Thomas Jefferson said? and warned us. In fact, I have his quote right here on the front page of this book. Very first page. When all government shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. Now, my dear friends, I'm here supporting a man for sheriff. Because how are we going to take America back? County by county. One sheriff at a time. Now, it's not just up to the sheriff. If you leave it up to the sheriff alone, then it's not going to happen. But he is the one that can lead this movement. He is the ultimate authority in your county. Do you know who your sheriff's boss is? Who's your sheriff's boss? You. Period. It's not the board of supervisors, not the county commissioners, not the county attorney. He responds and is responsible only to you. And that's it. So, my dear friends, do we have another speaker? All right. Okay. Good, I get more time. But that is the reason he's the most powerful. Did you know that? All power generates from one source in the United States of America. It's the first 3 words of the Constitution. Oh, we don't want to go by that. I don't want to do that. Okay? The Constitution, Tim is absolutely correct. We've got to get back to the supreme law of the land. We've got to restore the Constitution. We have to make it a part of America once again. The Constitution was our foundation. And I don't know anything about building anything. I don't care what it is. A cardboard box, building blocks, a house, a home, a car, a building like this, an auditorium. I don't know anything about building or construction, okay? I don't. But I know one thing. You remove the foundation, and the rest of the edifice will fall. And so, again, the people in Washington, D.C., the corrupt politicians, Washington, D.C., Congress, White House, everybody there is all part of that destruction. So again, who can you turn to for the solution? And it's right here. You, working with your sheriff and other local officials, yes. Does the mayor have a responsibility to enforce the Constitution? Yes. Does the city council? Yes. Does the dog catcher? Do teachers? How about a deputy sheriff or a peace officer who is patrolling your streets? Does he or she have a responsibility to enforce the Constitution? Yes. To put freedom and liberty in the execution of their job? Absolutely yes. All of us do. Did you know that we actually swore a solemn sacred oath to do that? Isn't it amazing that we're required by the supreme law of the land to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution and the Constitution of Michigan? But there's no requirement to keep that oath. Why? There should have to be no requirement. Once you give your word, that's it. The argument's over. Even if you don't like guns. I hate guns because they're so scary and they make a loud noise when you shoot them. Okay? So, you don't like guns? Anybody here, raise your hand if you have the courage to say, you don't like guns. Go ahead. You were kind of smiling. Go ahead. Yeah, you, that's right. You don't like guns? You related to him? Oh, then you love him. Good job. I don't care. I talk to people who don't like guns. I said, that's real nice. You don't have to like them. It's still the supreme law of the land. It's still the Second Amendment. And whether politicians like the Second Amendment or not, they're still bound by sacred oath to uphold, defend, and preserve the Second Amendment. In fact, it's one of the untouchables. The Founding Fathers did a list of Declaration of Rights 2 years after the Constitution was ratified, and they did the Bill of Rights. And these are the laws that they said government can never change, alter, or touch. These are the untouchables. Government cannot touch this. And here we have the Second Amendment with 20,000 illegal gun control laws against it. You would think the politicians think the Second Amendment says just the opposite of what it said. Because they continuously pass laws after laws after laws that are completely and entirely unconstitutional. And in this book, he was making fun of my title. The magic of gun control. You see, he has to know and understand that gun control, if it does anything good, if it provides any benefit to anyone, if it secures liberty or makes you safer, then that, Tim, would have to be magic! Because it's never done that before! And you can ask the people of Nazi Germany, and you can ask the Jews, and you can ask the Gypsies, and you can ask the Christians, and you can ask the Mormons, and you can ask all the other groups who Hitler had exterminated. If gun control works, ask them if it's magic. And thus, the reason, you're right, yeah, very good t-shirt there. And thus the reason why the founding fathers did what for the United States of America? They made gun control against the law. And this book bears that out. Now, as we go forward today, I want you to remember that before you leave today, we want every one of you to become a member of the CSPOA. That is a national group that I started. No, you don't have to be a cop or a sheriff to join. As a matter of fact, what did I say? This only works if we the people are involved. Now that's a $50 one-year membership. About $4.50 a month, okay? $4 a month. Okay, that's it. But you get one of my books, you choose The Magic of Gun Control for my cold dead fingers, or I love this one, this most recent one. Are you a David? You want to ask that question to everybody. Are you a David as a citizen? Are you a David as a congressman? Are you a David as a city councilman? Are you a David as a sheriff? Are you as a citizen of Michigan? Are you a David? First and foremost, you have to know Goliath. You have to know who he is. You can't fight an enemy that you don't know. And then, of course, the county sheriff, America's Last Hope, that started this whole movement. So, being that the way it is, if you become a member at CSPOA today, and I ask all of you to do that, you get to choose one of those books free. If you do $100, then you get all the books free, and we send you a very nice CSPOA dress shirt. That's a $50 shirt. So, you get all of that for $100. And these, what are these up here? These are novels of great fun reading. They are exciting reading, but they are tools of liberty. That's what these books are. And especially that $400,000 booklet, The Victory for State Sovereignty. Find out when a couple of sheriffs went to the Supreme Court against the Clinton administration and won. This is that case. Now I'm going to show you some of that case as we get going here. I'm going to show you the evidence of what I'm talking about. And I'm going to say something here very startling. And I actually believe that somebody, and maybe more than one or two, and we invite you, what we would call maybe a plant or a mole that's here tonight, you're welcome. I wish all of the people running for sheriff were here tonight. I wish all of their supporters were here tonight. Come and learn the truth. But I'm actually, one of the main reasons I'm here is to tell you the truth and why I'm supporting John Wooten for sheriff. Amen. Because, you know what? Because that's part of the solution. That's the solution. Someone who will actually stand for the Constitution. Someone who will not allow the IRS to come in here and victimize his citizens. Someone who will not allow the EPA to come in here and destroy your property rights. Someone who will not allow the FDA to come in here and destroy the farm of an Amish farmer because he doesn't pasteurize his milk. Do you know that that's actually happened across America and very close by in Indiana and Ohio and Wisconsin? I actually went to Wisconsin because an Amish farmer invited me there to go to the state capitol and drink raw milk. Illegal milk. And so I did. And I made a light milk. But I did it because it was freedom milk. And then I spoke before the Kentucky Sheriff's Association banquet. And there's 116 sheriffs there. And the Louisville sheriff, in whose jurisdiction I was speaking, was sitting right next to me on the stand. And I got a little bit scared because I had an Amish farmer bring me a glass of nice, cold, illegal milk. And I downed that milk. And I drank it down. And it's hard for me to drink milk. All milk tastes like milk that's been left out for 3 days. That's what all milk tastes like to me. So, anyway, I will say that raw milk tastes better and it goes down easier for me than milk. I did that. You know, I didn't know Vernon Hershberger. He wasn't a friend of mine. He wasn't a brother of mine or cousin. He's my brother now. We don't even go to the same church. We don't even believe the same things. So, we believe in America. We believe in helping neighbors. And we believe in liberty. And that's why we're here. I'm going to tell you something very startling, okay? Especially those of you who were maybe asked to be here for somebody else. If you really understood the importance of tonight's meeting and the importance of restoring our Constitution, now in such a crucial time in American history, where we are at the cusp of losing our precious Constitution, if you really knew and understood the vital nature of tonight's meeting and what we are about, you would ask all the other candidates to vote for John Bruton. Because we have very few options left. Because there's maybe one window open and one chance for us to take back America and to take back freedom. And he's willing to put himself on the line to do that. He's willing to pledge his life to this movement, to be free, to be America again, to have our Constitution as the supreme law of the land. He will defend that against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and peacefully and effectively restored as the supreme law of the land. Let me reiterate that this entire movement, my friends, is a peaceful process. We can do this, but time is of the essence, and we must emulate the Founding Fathers when they said, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And I'll add to that what Patrick Henry called to the holy cause of liberty. We must do likewise. We must do that and start doing that tonight. And that's why I came all this way. Because I want you and the rest of your community here to know and understand the importance of us saving our country. And that's why I'm supporting John. We must stand together in that holy cause. Now we're going to go through a little bit of the evidence. Like I say, anybody could come here from Timbuktu, Arizona, and spout off a bunch of opinions. I didn't come to do that. Okay? I am a messenger. I will show you the evidence, and I'll let you decide. But if you don't already know a lot of these things, you're going to be in for a big surprise. But I am going to show you some slides from the Supreme Court decision that I started that miraculously was a victory. We never thought it would get to the Supreme Court, but it did. And you know how many cases the Supreme Court takes? 1% of everything that goes to it. And ours, miraculously, was one of the 1%. Do you know how many actually then go on to victory after that? It's not 1%, it's less, because many of them lose. So all of this was just totally miraculous. And we know where miracles come from, don't we? Not from me. Okay? Amen. So I'm going to show you this. And first thing I want you to understand is this is a clip. And you can look it up on YouTube if you want. This is a news clip. And this deputy is all we are after. As a matter of fact, we named him Deputy Sheriff of the Year in 2013. CSPOA, Deputy Sheriff of the Year in 2013 because of what he did. This is, again, this is exactly what we are after at the CSPOA. Okay? Let's watch. Can you imagine that? A deputy sheriff, not there to kick in doors, not there to put handcuffs on people, there to defend the First Amendment, their civil liberties, to peaceably assemble, to freedom of speech, to be left alone. And you know, when that airport authority tells a deputy sheriff, give me their identification, he says, they don't have to do that. They're violating airport guidelines. That does that supersede the First Amendment? No. They haven't hurt anybody. They're not hurting anything. If people don't want to talk to them, they'll walk by them, okay? Folks, this is the type of police work that we're after. Somebody who defends and puts the Constitution first. That's all, folks. And that's what we do at the CSPOA full time. That's our full-time job, our full-time mission. And thank you so much. Folks, this is what freedom looks like. A deputy sheriff defending that. That's all we're after. And now I'm going to show you exactly the opposite of what we're after. There's a few examples of that out there too. Can you believe this deputy though? Where was he from? New York. You think we can do that in Michigan if New York can do it? Come on. Now they're looking for his estranged wife. Now, can you imagine what crime they've committed here? Okay, it's not him. But they put him in the vehicle for over 6 hours with his torn underwear. Didn't have anything else on. Can you imagine what the crime is? That's what?
Detroit. Regular complaint stopped at mayor and police, but the city pointed to the U.S. Department of Education.
Department of Education!
Wrong. And you got paid. I would say my guardian did because of it. With the help of the Stockton Police Department, we sent a legal contact one of the federal agents who was at the service this morning, who gave us a Washington, D.C. number for the Office of the Inspector General, who confirmed it was the Department of Education who conducted the search, but they can't discuss anything in the case until it's closed. Not even if there's policy to break in and handcuff people who default on student loans.
Default on student loans. Now, folks, if you're ever going to need to collect money from somebody, this is the way to do it. Get your SWAT team in there. If somebody ever owed you money, that pretty much guarantee you're going to get it, doesn't it? Especially if the person involved didn't even do it. Folks, do you think things are getting a little bit out of control? This wasn't Nazi Germany, this was Stockton, California. And he calls, and so does the news media, they call the Stockton Police Department. Yeah, we went with them. No, we don't do that. That's the opposite of what we do. We train sheriffs and police across this country to tell the federal government, you're not doing that in my county. We're not doing that here. No, we're not going with you, and you're not going to do it. That's a true constitutional sheriff. Have we had sheriffs like that? Have you ever heard of Brad Rogers from Elkhart County, Indiana? Well, the FDA came in going after an Amish farmer, just like I told you. And they went after this guy, and they're going to take him to a grand jury in Detroit because he won't pasteurize his milk. Why won't he pasteurize his milk? It's against his religion. They don't do that. Okay? They don't use technology to ruin milk or anything else. They use their hands to build a desk. Okay? They don't use power tools. Okay? That's the way they live, and that's who they are, and that's their religion. Can the FDA violate his religious beliefs? Absolutely not. Should a sheriff defend his religious beliefs? Yes, absolutely. And he did. So the sheriff went over, the Amish farmer called Sheriff Rogers over to his house, sat in his kitchen, found out what was going on. Sheriff Rogers called the FDA. Guess what he told them? If you come back into my county without due process, without duly signed warrants, and without probable cause, I'll arrest you for trespassing. They told him, well, we're going to arrest you for felony obstruction of justice. You can't interfere with our work. I know, that's a good one, isn't it? Obstruction of justice, that's justice? Okay, real funny. And so, yeah, the federal government, if you want a good joke, go there. There's a lot of them, 535 of them in Congress. And we're trying to get rid of one of them. So, get rid of that joke. So, Brad Rogers calls me, and he says, hey, Sheriff Mack, guess what Sheriff Rogers had about 4 years before that? CSPOA constitutional training. This right up here. We gave him the training. Sheriff Rogers knew that he had an obligation to defend his citizen, defend the Constitution, uphold, defend, protect, and preserve the United States Constitution. That's his job. The most important thing your sheriff can do anywhere is to keep his word and keep his oath of office. That's the most important thing. No, it's not catching drug runners. No, it's not protecting you from terrorists. No, it's not protecting you from gangbangers. All that's good. The most important thing he can do is uphold, defend, protect, and preserve the United States Constitution. Sorry. No, I'm not. I'm proud that there are sheriffs doing that. There's some peace officers doing it. And so Sheriff Rogers calls me and says, hey, I need you to help me devise a letter to tell the federal government, the FDA, that they don't have the authority to do what they're doing. So I devised that letter. If any of you would like a copy of it, email me at sheriffmack@hotmail, and I'll send you back that letter. It's an amazing letter. It must have worked. Because 3 days later, they sent a certified letter to Mr. Hostetler, said everything had been dropped. The FDA left town, and they haven't been back in 3.5 years. That's what we're supposed to do. Now, I totally believe this, but this is not a quote of mine. You might guess who said this, okay? Let's read it. There are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first person to advocate obeying just laws. Okay, that makes sense. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And you might say, well, who's to decide what's a just law or an unjust law? How about the people who swore the oath to uphold and defend the Constitution? If you know and understand the Constitution, you do just what Deputy Lennox did. Well, who was Deputy Lennox to decide what was just and unjust? Do you know who he was? A sworn officer of the law. He is a guardian, not a warrior. He's a guardian of liberty, not a warrior. He didn't come there to do battle. He didn't come there to violate rights. He came there to guard liberty. Every peace officer should know and understand the Constitution and know and understand what are just and unjust laws. And you don't enforce unjust laws. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. Well, let's see who really said this, okay? Anybody got any guesses before I turn the page? Martin Luther King. And you know why we're proud to show that? Because it disarms the other side. Because they love this man. And I don't agree with everything Martin Luther King said or did, but I agree with that. And I want the other side to know. We look at all sides. We take all sides. We believe this. This applies to us. This doesn't just apply to black people. This applies to everybody. As we seek for freedom, and as we search to restore our Constitution, we must know and understand. There are no exceptions. We don't exempt one group and say, you get freedom, but you don't. You get freedom, but you don't. You know, the Supreme Court is the one in Plessy versus Ferguson who came up with this idiotic notion of separate but equal. Separate but equal. To support what? The segregation that Democrats were supporting and promoting in our country. Who supported civil rights in our country for 100 years, or more? The Republicans. And I'm not here defending either one of them. I'm just telling you the truth. Democrats fought against it. And they are the ones who promoted Jim Crow laws and segregation. And the Supreme Court endorsed it. So what are we supposed to do? Say, oh, well, we're going to go along with that because the Supreme Court said so. Oh, no. They are not the ultimate say, and I'm going to show you who is. Only the United States Supreme Court can say what liberty is and what freedom is, right? No. Sorry. First of all, it's the person who takes the oath, and there's the oath. And you swear in God's name to the people that you will uphold, defend, protect, and serve. That's what you swear. And the allegiance is to the Constitution itself. And why do we take that oath? Because, and that's a little quick scene that I can't show about the oath right now. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, the Founding Fathers put it in there that each of us, in all three branches of government, judicial, executive, and legislative, we must all swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. They were pretty smart, huh? So all three branches would be separate, but required to do what? Uphold and defend the Constitution. Does the executive branch work for the judicial and legislative branch? No, they're separate. They each have their own lane of traffic to go in. Okay? So why do cops and sheriffs and others, chiefs of police, say they have to do whatever the legislature tells them to? Or whatever the judges tell them to? That's wrong. If we work for the other two branches, then we just got rid of one of the branches. We just got rid of the executive branch. Because we work for the executive branch. We are the executors of the law. We don't work for the other two. Do we work with them? Yeah, sure, we will. Can we tell them no? Absolutely. I did. Lots of times. Now, state nullification. Did I make that up? I didn't make that term up, did I? Who did? Jefferson and Madison, the two most constitutional scholars of all the Founding Fathers. And they wrote Kentucky and Virginia resolution stating what? State nullification, and says states have the authority to judge the constitutionality of the federal government's laws and decrees. Wow, that's pretty bold, isn't it? Why do the states have that authority? Who formed the federal government? The states. Who's the boss of the federal government? The states. What is the key word in the 10th Amendment that proves that the states are above the federal government? The word is delegated. The states delegated to the new government a few powers and authorities. If the boss delegates to you and he doesn't like what you did, can you take it back and delegate it to somebody else? Absolutely. If you give it or you surrender it, then maybe not. But the 10th Amendment says we delegate it. And again, remember, who formed them? The states. You can also say the Founding Fathers, or you can also say we the people. Okay? It's all the same. Now, he also argued, Madison did, that the states should refuse to enforce laws which they deem to be unconstitutional. Wow. Did we just get rid of the U.S. Supreme Court? No. But we did what? A little check and balance on them, didn't we? That's what it's for. And the states have the authority to do this. Now, why did Jefferson and Madison write the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions at this time? Because they told the American people, they said, we know the Alien and Sedition Act is one of John Adams' brainchilds, and it's an abomination, and it should never have happened, and you don't have to go to the U.S. Congress to stop it. Just tell your states to stop it. Just tell them to shove the Alien and Sedition Act. That's exactly what they can do, and that's what a lot of states did. They didn't have to go make another law. You don't have to go lobby or pound the pavement in Washington. Oh, please be nice to us again. Make it irrelevant in your county. Make it irrelevant in your state. Tell them no. You're not going to do that here. You want to know what some of the colonists and founding fathers did to tax collectors? Oh, man, we need to get some of that back, don't we? The IRS should fear us, not us fear the IRS. Oh, the railroad. Sorry. Okay, I love this word. Okay? This is in the Kentucky Resolution. Here's Madison talking again. And he said, look, that state's legislature is duty bound to Did you know your state was actually responsible to be that check on federal authority so they make sure that federal agents are not victimizing any of you? And the sheriffs of this country should be getting together, and this is the training we give them, and this is the direction we give them, and this is the type of sheriffs that we have now. Do you know who another member of ours is? CSQA, Constitutional Sheriff of the Year, 2013, along with Deputy Lennox, none other than Sheriff David A. Clark, Jr. from Milwaukee. A registered Democrat. Probably the most conservative Democrat in America. But you know what? It's all about what? America. Americans. Standing and defending the Constitution. That's what Sheriff Clark did. Interpose. Do you know what interpose means? It's pretty simple. It's a basketball term. It's really not a basketball term. It's a religious term. The doctrine of interposition. So, the innocent citizen is here, the federal agent is here, and this is the constitutional sheriff. And he's playing basketball. And anytime he moves, you move. Just like in basketball. And you keep them, the crook from the federal government, or the Goliath from the federal government, you keep him away from the innocent citizen. That's it. It's not violent. It's not illegal. It's not improper. Sometimes it's fun. Because it's basketball. And you keep yourself in the way for as long as it takes. And you defend your citizen for as long as it takes. And you keep your oath for as long as it takes. And you make it messy for the Goliaths of Washington to victimize your people. Great system, isn't it? That's what we're for. Now, these are the two sheriffs that went to the Supreme Court on this decision. Jake Prince from Montana, yours truly from Arizona. And look at that. This is actually in this little book. Remember, you get this $400,000 book when you become a member of CSQA and you get any of these others. The magic. But any of these books are great. From My Cold Dead Fingers, or Are You a Goliath? Are You a Goliath? Are You a David? We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish Congress did that? Don't you wish your state legislature did that? And does this mean, well, the state's not subject to federal direction, but the county is and the city is? No. And Scalia, who wrote this decision, God rest his soul, made it clear that it also applies to the political subdivisions of the state. Mentions that twice in the decision. This is an amazing decision. Let me tell you something. This is the most powerful state sovereignty 10th Amendment decision in the history of our country. This is it. And Scalia offers solution after solution and equations for the solution in restoring our Constitution. And guess what it is almost every time? The states have to get busy. And he calls it a healthy balance of power. Do we have a healthy balance of power between the states and federal government today? No, that's a joke. But he does offer that. Now, he also, in the decision and in the Brady Bill itself, it calls the sheriffs who did this lawsuit, it calls us what? CLEOs. What's a CLEO? Chief Law Enforcement Officer. There you have documented evidence that the sheriff is the CLEO. It's in the Brady Bill itself. Don't you love it when the federal government gets something right? Doesn't happen very often. Oh, here's the threat. In the Brady Bill, this is why I'm so surprised today that more sheriffs didn't join the lawsuit, because look at what it did. It threatened to arrest us if we failed to comply. Under a separate provision of the Gun Control Act of 1968, Federal Gun Control Law, any person who knowingly violates the section of the Gun Control Act amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. Fines and prison, what we were looking at. And you know that my attorney actually asked me if I wanted to file an injunction against the Justice Department and the White House, against Bill Clinton and Janet Reno for being able to arrest me until we got out of court, until it was adjudicated. Do you really realize what that means? I'm going to have an order of protection from Bill Clinton. He can't come near me, he can't touch me until we're out of court. So I said, yeah, go for it. And the judge gave it to us. So I'm the only person in history to get an order of protection from Bill Clinton on a non-sexual matter. So let's keep moving here because we've got still a little bit to cover, and I don't want to take all night on this. Now, I love this. This is from Thomas Paine. And you have to understand how much Thomas Paine meant to America. Because even George Washington loved his writing so much, he required all his soldiers to read it when they were at Valley Forge after they had crossed over the Delaware. You see, when the Delaware crossing, you see that painting of Washington, and he's looking so strong. They were running from the Hessians and the Redcoats because they were so outnumbered and outgunned. And if they weren't deserting, all his troops deserting, they had dysentery. And they were starving. And some didn't have boots. And one captain in his journal said, some of the men were naked in every sense of the word. And he had them read Thomas Paine. And he got them so inspired that he got them to go back across the Delaware, march 20 miles in the snow on December 26th, and go in and do the Battle of Trenton against the Hessians and some other redcoats. And they won. Because Washington taught us, when your back is to the wall, when you're starving and you have no place else to go, what time is it? It's time to attack. What tremendous leadership, my friends. And that's what time it is for us. We must stand firm. We must get our Constitution back. And look what Thomas Paine said. Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax us in all cases, but to bind us in all cases. And, he goes on, go down, and if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then there is not such a thing as slavery on earth. You see, the Stamp Act was another tax that the colonists said, no, we're not doing that. The Parliament and King George III got so mad that they repealed the Stamp Act. And very next minute, they passed the Declaratory Act, saying to the colonists, we don't care what you say. We can legislate in all cases whatsoever regarding your lives. And the Third Amendment even demonstrates that. What's the Third Amendment? You can't house soldiers without permission in people's homes. That's what they did. Hessians and redcoats would come and knock on colonists' home and say, there's 6 of us here, we all live here now, we're taking the master bedroom, thank you very much. And they lived there. And they were fed by the colonists. They could legislate in all matters whatsoever. And you know what that reminds me of? Obamacare. If they can do that, they can legislate in all cases whatsoever. And so what have we done? We've come full circle, all the way back to the Redcoats, to the Hessians, and to King George III, to the abuses that we fought a war to stop. I pray that we don't have to fight another war. We already fought it. But if we let all these freedom and liberties die, and if we don't put the right people in office here locally to build those defenses, to erect the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority, as Madison warned us to do, then America's going to die. She's already on her deathbed, and it's going to take some real serious CPR, constitutional principle resuscitation. Now, we love Thomas Paine. We're going to keep going back to him in just a little bit. But we already know the IRS has committed a bunch of crimes in this country. Their rap sheet is longer than anything. We have IRS agents that have exposed crimes that the IRS has committed. It's like the Gestapo of America. And who has reined them in? Any Republican reined in the IRS? Tell me his name. Tell me the president that was a Republican that reined in the IRS. You can't do it. Tell me the Democrat that did. You can't do it. And yet we allow it to continue. And now, I told you I'd show you the evidence. Here's the United States drug agents engaged in sex parties. The cartel supplied the prostitutes. This is down in Colombia, where the United States DEA are supposed to be fighting the cartels. And if you read the article right there in the top part, it says, for years, Drug Enforcement Administration agents posted in Colombia engaged in sex parties. For years! I don't know if any of you know this, but that's illegal. It's against the law. That's taking bribes. Okay? From the people they're supposed to be fighting. What happened to them? No, you're right, nothing. Were any of them disciplined? No. Any of them fired? No. Any of them charged, prosecuted, arrested? No. None. Nothing. And so, you really want a sheriff who's going to allow the DEA or the IRS to come in here unfettered and do whatever they want to you? They don't have our trust anymore. They don't follow the law. They are taking the examples of the people in Congress and running with them. And Congress and these federal agents are out of control. Who can you turn to for peace, safety, and liberty? Now do you understand why I said what I said at the beginning? If John's opponents and their families and friends understood how vital this is to America, that we have a constitutional sheriff in office, they would be voting for him. And that would be happening all across this country. I want to show just a few other examples, and then we're going to tie this part up. This is where Justice Scalia describes the solution. He says the separation of the two spheres, the state sphere and the federal sphere, is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. State sovereignty and action from the state is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Look what he compares it to. Just as the separation and independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. When you came to this meeting tonight, did you want to know how to reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from our government? There it is. You must have a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government. We don't have that. And so what do the states have to do? The cities have to do it. The counties have to do it. And we have to do it. Now, real quickly here. And this is my favorite quote from this decision, but the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. Wow. Have you ever heard the Supreme Court say anything like that? Folks, I didn't make this up. I was a part of it, but I didn't make this up. It's so freedom-oriented. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government, precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. You ever heard that before? Ask Rahm Emanuel what his motto was. Barack Obama has said the same thing. Never let a good crisis go to waste, even if you have to create one, which is what they did with healthcare. And just to show you a few more sheriffs that know this and how to do it, badge versus the bag. Did I make that up? Nope. This is Rage Magazine, an article in 2003 about sheriffs who stood against the BLM. The Bureau of Land Management, not Black Lives Matter. Okay. Sheriff Gary Amon from Idaho. Look what he did. Gary Amon made it clear that he didn't want BLM help in local law enforcement and warned that he expected to be notified of any federal investigation or enforcement action, including impoundment of cattle the feds considered to be trespassing. Yeah, you gotta watch those trespassing cattle. You let trespassing cattle go, man, you're gonna, that's almost as bad as Amish farmers who don't pasteurize them. You can't let those cry. And so here comes Goliath. And Sheriff Amon said, no, Goliath, stay out of here. Don't make me get my slingshot. That's really what he said there. And even in San Bernardino, California, this guy is not the sheriff. There's been 2 sheriffs since him, and they're not nearly as good as he. But if we can have a deputy sheriff in New York and a sheriff in California stand up to the federal government, stand up to Goliath, I think we should have a few in Michigan, don't you? Yeah. And I think we should get one right here in Hillsdale, don't you? Yeah. Boy, that's great. San Bernardino Sheriff revoked local law enforcement authority from the federal government across all 20,000 square miles of his county, huge county, and advised them to consult him first before taking any action on private property. And that's what sheriffs across this country need to be doing, and that's what we train them to do. And we show them how to do this. Put the feds on notice that there's a few things you're not going to do in my county. The first one on the list is confiscation of firearms. Don't you think if Hillary gets in there, which looks likely at this point, don't you think if she gets in there, you want a sheriff telling her, don't even try gun control here. You can talk about it all you want in Washington, D.C. You can disarm everybody in Washington, D.C. you want. That's where you have authority. You don't have jurisdiction out here, and you're not doing it. And now give me 700 sheriffs that tell her that. 700. 1/4 of the sheriffs in America. well, 750 would be good. That's all we're after. It's a simple process. Working with the people, standing for what's right, and protecting the Constitution. Then Ken Jones from Eureka, Nevada, same thing. Look what he said. He said this key thing. What they really want is to extend federal authority over all law enforcement in the United States, whether local people agree with it or not, said Jones. Well, it's not in this county. That's what we got to tell them. It's not in you. You might go in another county and that sheriff lets you do whatever you want. Go over there. But as long as I'm sheriff here, it's not going to happen in this county. What's wrong with that? That's what you swore to do when you took your job. Oh, well, we're about doing our job. We got to write those tickets, and we got to kick in those doors, and we got to arrest those potheads, and we got to send those papers, we got to fill our jail. No, that's not your job. Your job is to uphold, defend, protect, and serve. That's your job. 4 words! And that's the CSPOA model. Those 4 words. Now, my dear friends, I'm going to leave it right there. We've gone over a lot. I've really pushed it. This is actually a 4-hour class. Invite me back sometime, and we'll spend a Saturday together, and we'll go through this whole thing. If any of you want to become a CSPOA certified trainer and do what I do all across the country, we're going to be having that training in Utah at the end of August. Keep in touch with me on that, okay? To do that, you must become a member, okay? To preserve liberty, you must become a member. We're asking you to join us. I am asking you to join us in this holy cause. We take back America, county by county, sheriff by sheriff, and state by state. We make the Goliath of Washington, D.C. irrelevant in our lives. I'll be out at the table right outside the door when you leave. I'll give you a card, you can fill it out. I suggest the best deal is the $100 deal. Get all the books, the tools for liberty here, get 2 or 3 of these, pass those around, see what the power of this is, and let's stand together in this holy cause. The CSPOA does this full time. My wife and I do this full time. We have staff all over America, from Pennsylvania to California, Texas to Idaho, or Utah. My dear friends, this is a movement that was started by a couple of small-town sheriffs in 1994. Yours truly being one of them, when we told the feds, no. And no more suing. Standing and interposing and telling them no is what we do. Now, my friends, I started this off telling you why I was here, and I want to introduce him now. Can I introduce him now? He's a good man. He's a good friend. He's a good husband. He's a good father. And he knows and understands what the position of sheriff entails. And he has the courage to do it. Please join with me in supporting and now welcoming John Rutan.
It's not often you get to meet your heroes. This man is one of mine. I've known for a long time that the Constitution, we've gotten away from it too far. And I always knew that somewhere deep in me, that liberty was there. And it wasn't until 2013 when I listened to Sheriff Max speak that I understood I found a home and where I belong. And there are other people out there just like me. That was empowering. I want to speak just a little bit tonight. A lot of people know that there's problems in our government. We point our finger a lot of different places. But just like a doctor that's looking at a patient with a problem, a lot of times we can diagnose a lot of the symptoms, but But if we don't diagnose the disease and take care of the disease, we'll always have the sickness. And if we don't understand the Constitution and where the sickness comes from, we'll never cure it. Really quickly, I want to just do a crash course on the first 3 articles of the Constitution. Madison, the father of the Constitution, told us in Federalist 51 that the ends of government is justice. So the only reason for government is justice. If we don't have justice, then there is no need for government. So what we have to ask ourselves is, do we have justice? And how do we get that justice back? Our founding fathers built this Constitution on principles, true principles, principles that go all the way back into antiquity. They studied it, they looked at it. When we study the Federalist Papers, we know just how much thought they put into it. This wasn't something that a bunch of people came together and said one day, yeah, you know what? Let's just thumb our nose at the king. It's not how it happened. There was a lot of forethought that went into it, a lot of study. How many people today would put their life and their income and their property up, pledged to help their neighbor? Not many. Not many. So they were very extraordinary people at that time. Some of the natural truths, the natural laws that they understood, that they based this Constitution on, are laws of nature that are true. One of the, can anybody else tell me a natural, what about gravity? Is gravity a natural law? Sure, you drop an apple, it falls to the ground. The first article of the Constitution set up the largest and most powerful branch of government, known as the legislature. In that legislature had 2 powers: the power of impeachment and the power of the purse. Madison himself told us that any time you put the power of the sword and the power of the purse in the same hand, it is despotism. It's tyranny. He said that's what we have with King George. He has the power of the sword and the power of the purse in the same hand. So when they put this Constitution together, they studied that, and they knew that that is despotic. That is tyranny. They didn't want tyranny anymore. So that first article of the Constitution sets up the legislative branch, the largest and most powerful branch of government. They gave them 2 powers: the power of the purse, the power of impeachment. But they said because that branch is so powerful, they must be the most responsive to the people. So they only gave them 2-year terms. The second article of the Constitution sets up the executive branch of government. It was supposed to have less power. The only power that the executive branch of government had was the power of the sword. But to compensate for that, they gave them 4-year terms. Then they set up the judiciary with the third article of the Constitution. They were supposed to have little to no power. But to compensate for that, they gave them constitutionally guaranteed salaries and life appointments during times of good behavior. Now, there was another reason why they did that. They didn't want the judiciary to fall to minority or majority faction. What we know today is the political winds. They wanted them to be true to the law, not true to some new idea, whatever the new craze was sweeping the nation. So when we understand this is how they set our Constitution up, this was the foundation of our government in our country. Then we hit a period in the United States between 1913 and 1935, known as the Progressive Era. During the Progressive Era, we decided that these old natural laws didn't apply to man anymore. That man was ever evolving, ever getting smarter. You can can govern ourselves. We don't need these silly, silly principles that obviously don't apply to us anymore. And what happened was they started to create what I call the litany of alphabet soup agencies. You can name all of them. IRS, just about all of them have 3 letters. Some of the newest ones that we know are DHS, Department of Homeland Security. Right? We're here from the government. We're here to help. Those are scary words. Now, what did they do when they created those agencies? This is the scary part. I'm going to diagnose the disease right in front of you. Criminal law and civil law go all the way back into antiquity. There's strings of theory that go all the way back into antiquity with civil law and criminal law. They go all the way back to the Code of Hammurabi, the 10 Commandments, the Magna Carta of 1215, the Mayflower Compact, the Northwest Ordinance. It has a string of theory that goes all the way back into antiquity. It has weathered the test of time to prove it to be true. During 1913 to 1935, we created a study of law that we'd never had before, called administrative law. Now, administrative law has no string going back into antiquity. It has not weathered the test of time to prove itself to be true. Administrative law comes down to one person's opinion. Basically, it's tantamount to the sheep going to the wolves and saying, we don't think you should eat us. And the wolves say, that's a valid argument. Let's have a hearing. And we've decided it's lunchtime. That's what administrative law is tantamount to. Now, when we set up this alphabet soup of agencies here, let's just take the IRS. They're an easy target, and they're probably the easiest to demonstrate. And they're probably one of the alphabet soup agencies that everybody sitting in this room fears every April 15th. Let's look what we did with that agency, how we did it. We gave them all 3 branches of government in one package. These people are not voted on, so they're not responsive to the public, are they? How many people voted on the director of the IRS? Anybody? I didn't think so. So they're not responsive to the people at all. And yet they get the ability to create regulatory law. They get the ability then to execute that regulatory law through seizures. Then if you don't like that, you can complain to them, and they set up their own judge, jury, and executioner of IRS agents so that you can have an administrative hearing and come to them and say, I don't think you should eat me. They have the power of the purse and the power of the sword in the same hand. Have we forgotten how to study history so that we're not damned to repeat it? Did Madison not tell us clear enough that having the power of the sword and the power of the purse in the same hand is despotic and it's tyranny? What part of that didn't we understand? But we've created despotic, tyrannical groups in this country. Now, the way this happens is, the IRS comes to you and they say, we think that you broke the law. We think that you frauded us from not paying us your money. So we want you to bring in all your paperwork to us so that we can review it and put together a case against you so we can charge you with a felony and throw you in prison. I got a couple problems with that. What happened to the 4th and 5th Amendment? Right? Probable cause, search and seizure. I have the right not to bear witness against myself. Is this sounding familiar to anyone? Well, one of the things in America is if you don't know what your rights are and you don't assert them, you lose them. So when the IRS comes to the people and they say, we want you to bring all this stuff in so that we can form this case against you and charge you, we're Americans. I'm going to fight that. So we say, no, not going to do it. And they say, okay, fine. Now what we're going to do, because you didn't follow our regulatory law, a legislative function that we created, Now we're going to seize your bank accounts and we're going to seize your property. What if that property is his property and that's the property he uses, his business, to feed his family and pay his bills? If you can't feed your family and you can't pay your bills, can you pay a lawyer for your defense? I thought the Sixth Amendment said I have the ability to defend myself. I have the right to counsel. You only have the right to counsel if you can afford it. If I take his business, can he afford it? So the IRS says, you know what, Tim, if you just pay us $20,000, we'll let this all go away. How many out here can afford a $20,000 extortion payment? I can't. I can barely afford a $20 extortion payment. So Tim says, I'm going to fight this thing. No, I'm not bringing you that stuff. They seize his property, and he goes, no, wait a minute, I've got to be able to eat it. So he goes to the IRS and he says, hey, can we have a hearing? They say, sure, we can have a hearing. So he has a hearing. By the time Tim's at that process, he's about 60 to 80 grand into it. Because he chose to fight it. He's an American. He's going to fight it. But what Tim doesn't realize is he's just given up his Fourth Amendment right, his Fifth Amendment right, his Sixth Amendment right. And what did we just learn a little bit ago? If I don't assert my right up front, I lose it, don't I? Now this is administrative law. We're not even into due process yet. That's not due process. Why? Because we're not into the first 3 articles of the Constitution set up the government. That's the only time we get into due process. So finally, after Tim goes to the administrative hearing and the wolves decide they're still hungry, he gets to petition the federal court system, which was set up in the 3rd article of the Constitution. Now Tim's finally in the due process. But Tim's already given up his 4th, his 5th, and his 6th Amendment right. How effective of a defense do you think he's going to be able to muster? Chances are he's not going to win. So now Tim's into it for about 120 grand, and he's thinking to himself, you know what? If I was a better businessman, I would have paid that $20,000 extortion. Right? He kept $100,000 in my pocket. In fact, all of his friends are going to tell him how crazy he was to spend $120,000. All they had to do is spend $20,000 and save $100,000. But why do we do that? Why do we have that $20,000 extortion? Well, that's because the first 3 articles of the Constitution set up our government. I love this. I hear this all the time. The so-and-so president doubled it. He doubled the size of the federal government. No, he didn't. First 3 articles of the Constitution limited the size of the federal government absolutely right there. So what did they double? They doubled the 4th branch of government, bureaucracy, the litany of alphabet soup agencies. That's what they doubled. And all those people are working for free, right? You know, see, the government doesn't make a product and sell and then take that money as profit. When they start putting more people on the payroll, they got to start taking more of your money to pay for it. Now, there's another true principle that goes all the way back into antiquity, and I think that Benjamin Franklin coined it best when he said, there will always be a proponent of the people to give more to the prince for what the prince can give back to them. Think about that. There will always be a proponent of people to give more to the prince for what the prince can give back to them. What we're doing is stealing from our people so that we can pay for that 4th branch of government. Every time we create another alphabet agency, TSA, DHS, you name it, what happens to us? We have to pay more. And it destroys our economy so we have even less to be able to pay more. This is the disease in Washington. The disease is the lust of power and money. And it's not their money, it's your money that they're stealing. So as sheriff, will I stand against that? Absolutely, 100%. How many of the other 2 candidates have that backbone? How many of them understand the very principles of the Constitution to be able to diagnose the disease? See, if you don't know what the disease is, you can't cure the body politic. You need a sheriff that understands what the disease is. We need a sheriff that not only understands the disease, but has the ability to stand and has the backbone to say no to the federal government. Do you think that's simple? Do you think that's easy? A sheriff can't do it without the people behind him. The sheriff is that front man that stands up there and interposes himself and says no. Now, do you think every sheriff has the courage to do that? You can ask Sheriff Mack when he was going through that lawsuit. Ask him if there wasn't nights that he laid his head on the pillow with his eyes closed, thinking, did I do the right thing? What's going to happen to me? See, this is why we have to pledge ourselves to each other. This is why we have to pledge our fortunes and our lives to bring back liberty. It takes all of us. But I will be, if you elect me as your sheriff on August 2nd, I will be that man that has the courage and the knowledge to stand against those that would come and take your liberty. Justice Scalia said it is our duty to erect barriers against the federal government and the state government from the incursion of your liberty. It's a duty. It's a duty to the people that the sheriff has to do. So my question is to you, how important is this election? The FBI just cleared Hillary Clinton. This blew my mind. First, they sat there and they told us exactly what the crime was, and that she met all of the body of the crime to be accused of it and charged with it. And then the last sentence was, but we're not going to prosecute. Why do you think the FBI didn't prosecute her? Clinton. The FBI is even afraid of her. Isn't it something that in our vernacular we have this thing called somebody died very Clinton-esque? That shouldn't even be in our vernacular if we were living under liberty. So you think maybe the FBI director was worried about that Clinton-esque? Or was it that there's two other agencies out there that are pushing for who they want in there to keep you under their thumb? So see, national politics, we can spend all day long arguing national politics and state politics. That's not where it's at. Local politics is where it's at. We need to get involved locally and stop complaining about federal and state. Don't worry about what's happening to somebody in Colorado. Worry about what's happening to your neighbor when the IRS is coming down and seizing their property. Have we had the IRS in this county? Have we had property seized in this county by the IRS? Yes. Absolutely. Is it on the front page of the news? Absolutely not. And have we ever seen the sheriff that we've had for 20 years stand for the people of this county? I can't think of one time. It's time that we take our neighborhoods back. It's time that we preserve liberty for Hillsdale County. I don't care what happens in Jackson. I don't care what happens in Lenawee. I don't care what happens in Branch. Those are their counties. But these are our neighbors. Our neighbors. On August 2nd, let's preserve that liberty for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rattan. All right, we've got one more guest here tonight. This guest here is a U.S. Marine. I won't say former Marine because there's no such damn thing. His family has had blue-collar roots with the big three automakers since they arrived in this country 3 generations ago. This man gives us of himself and has volunteered to go on missions to both Haiti and the West Indies. He's an avid hunter and a sportsman. Again, like most conservatives do, instead of giving them other people's money, he gives them himself. Another example, fine example. He did tsunami relief work in Thailand, India, in the Andaman Islands. You know, I'm just trying to pronounce that, so I apologize for that. Those islands wrong. He built a business, a construction and general contracting business which serves his local area in Genesee County. He is currently running to be the next county sheriff of Genesee County. His campaign information can be found at MattKroll4sheriff.com, and that 4 is the number 4. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Matt Kroll III.
Well, first of all, I gotta set the record straight. I did join the United States Marine Corps in 1978. However, I was a rebellious young lad, and I did not graduate as a Marine, so I am not a Marine. I regret that moment every day of my life. I give all honor to those that have served and those that have graduated as Marines. I just wanted to set that record straight. I was a troubled young lad. I was involved in drugs, alcohol, rock and roll, the whole 10 yards back then. I even spent time in county lockup. But by the grace of God, it changed my life, or he changed my life around. But I did do the rest of the stuff that you're talking about. Genesee County is the home of the Flint water crisis. Because I have a disaster organization where I am self-funded, I do travel around the world doing disaster relief work as well as here in the United States. Why not go to my own community 8 miles north of me and assist in the water crisis up there? So I began doing that in early January of this year when it first became a situation. As I began handing out water and talking to the people, I wondered, well, why, when this crime is being committed in our local area, is not the sheriff doing something about it? Why isn't he even investigating the crime against humanity in the city of Flint, my county seat? And the answer was the same everywhere and everybody I talked to. He's not doing a thing about it. He's a politician that's sitting on his hands. I've never been in law enforcement. Again, I spent time in county lockup, so I understand that aspect of the law. But I need all qualifications to run for sheriff. And I do know the law better than the current sheriff, because I know his perfect law, and I know the constitutional law. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Yeah, I heard Sheriff Matt talk about the freedom of speech amendment. And I hear that from everybody. I had a news interview yesterday, and I asked her the same thing. What does the First Amendment talk about? She says freedom of speech. Well, that's convenient for the news media to say that. However, it begins to say that Congress, who makes law, first of all? Does the president? Does the judicial branch, judges, Supreme Court, do they make law? No, Congress shall make law. So the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law concerning the establishment of religion, nor can they do anything about the free exercise of that. Then it goes on to say about the freedom of speech and right to assemble. But let's always remember that Congress can't even change the law concerning any of those, including the rest of the amendments. They can't change the gun control law, Second Amendment. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't give any exceptions. If you want to make it so that felons cannot carry a firearm, then make an amendment to it. If you want to make an amendment where young boys and girls can't carry a firearm, then make an amendment to it. It's that simple. Congress should make an amendment to those things. In my county, once I become sheriff, I will recognize the Constitution. I will stop the federal government and local police departments and state police departments from infringing on people's rights. Here we are in a public schoolhouse. A teenager going to junior high, middle school, or high school cannot even wear an NRA shirt or a religious shirt to school. They'll get suspended. Well, who made that a law? Because we just talked about the First Amendment. I will go and sit down with the administrator if that happens while I'm sheriff and inform them that they're breaking the law and that they will be arrested for breaking the law. The student has the freedom to do that. Private school is a little bit different. It doesn't matter if you're from Hillsdale County or from Genesee County. The importance is that you hold your sheriff accountable. Make him understand that he serves the people. Help him to understand that he is responsible to the people. The only elected law enforcement in all the country is the sheriff. And that's for a good reason. So that we the people, can hold them accountable. Now, I want to thank you all for allowing me to take a few minutes and speak. And remember to pray for the families of the officers that lost their lives yesterday. What a tragic situation. Don't get caught up in the race-baiting situation that the federal government is trying to push so hard. Don't get caught up in that. Divided we fall, united we stand. We as Americans, black, red, yellow, white, doesn't matter. We need to stand together. So remember the families and remember those communities too in your heart. You know, think about the people from Dallas and all of the United States. We're all dealing with it today. Again, thank you. God bless you all.
That concludes this evening's festivities. When Mr. Sheriff Mack was saying about buying his membership in his law enforcement group, it's more important than even more important than raising the money is getting the numbers there to represent us. To make that group have power with the members, to give it a voice, if you will. So even a $20 membership, folks, if you give that, you give that group a voice with your lawmakers. So consider that.